Thanks so much, Chloe. Hi, everyone. I'm Suzanne Lawrence with Advisor Business Solutions. We call ourselves ABS, and we are one of the founding partners of the BLX internship program. One of the things that we do quite a bit of is actually review all of the resumes that are submitted for the internship application process. And we also interview each of the applicants after we review all of the applications, the resumes, and make sure everything is looking um, very acceptable for moving you through the process. So I want to be able to share a lot of helpful tips for everyone who is looking at how to either do a resume for the first time, how to improve on the resume maybe that you have written in the past, or even put some context to what are some of the things that might help your resume to be stronger in the event that you've submitted resumes in the past for other kinds of positions and did not hear back or get any traction. So, for all of you attending, thanks so much for making the time today. We do have a lot of strong interest for applicants who come into the BLX program to be considered for getting hired at a financial planning firm for next summer in a paid position. And what we want to do is to be able to do a couple of things with you over this next 50 minutes or so. For one, we want you to use some of these tips to really think about how it might apply to your own situation. I also want you to think about what are some of the questions that you may have in any of the areas that we're going to cover, and use this time wisely, because if there are things that you're not sure of, we certainly want to be able to make sure that you have an opportunity to share your question or to be able to think about what would be some ways of addressing anything that you may have gotten stuck with or not really sure of how to best work through any of your career type of experience that you want to include on the resume. So feel free to use the chat. Make sure that if you have questions along the way that you put them in as soon as they pop in your mind. We don't need to wait until the end of the session to be able to answer questions. We're going to work through them as we go through any of the chapters that or any of the segments that you have questions on. So, with that, I'm going to get started with our discussion. This is intended to be very hands on, so feel free to ask any questions or if you have any points that you want to share briefly, you're welcome to do so. So, when you're creating a resume, I need you to think about the resume is about the information that you're providing, but really it's for the hiring managers. What are the hiring managers who are going to be making the decisions as to who they interview, as to who would be a potential good candidate? What are they looking for? So let's flip the script here. It's thinking about what goes on your resume is really what's going to be for the hiring managers to read and to know about you. So here's a couple of quick things that we want to touch on as far as the hiring managers are concerned. Now, as you know, hiring managers may have specific points or areas or traits that they're going to be more drawn to. So they want to have candidates who have very relevant experience to the position they're looking to bring on someone for, people who can compose themselves in a polished and professional manner on paper as well as in person, but also who would be a candidate who's really going to be a good cultural fit for the company. So these are things that are going to potentially trigger a hiring manager when they're reviewing your information that might say, ah, yes, that's someone. I'm going to put them in what I call the short pile of resumes because they may potentially receive 50 to 100 resumes. You just never know how many resumes that hiring managers are receiving. Also, if it's coming through the BLX program, which we hope that you will all submit for, keep in mind that our team is going to be looking at any resumes submitted like what we know hiring managers are looking for. So we have a quick poll question that we'd like to ask you all to give your answer. It's only going to take you literally about 10 seconds. But the question is, how important is it to submit a cover letter when you're applying for a job? You can pick one of the three, always submit a cover letter, only submit a cover letter when requested, or never submit a cover letter. Go ahead and pick what you think is the best response. And we'll just give us like 30 seconds for everyone to submit their answer.
All right. And we have responses from just about everyone. It's all in the poll. All right. And so looks like most of the crowd said always submit a cover letter.
That's great. And thank you for sharing that, everyone. Thanks, Chloe. And we do actually recommend to always submit a cover letter as well. And I'm going to say, just thinking of it for what is the purpose of a cover letter, it's really to complement your resume, but it gives a little more information about yourself. So even if it's not required when you're reviewing any kind of job posting or information that you're going to submit a resume, put a cover letter together, make sure that it complements the information on your resume. I know that when we receive resumes as part of the application process, most of the time the stronger candidates have also submitted a cover letter, even though we don't necessarily require it in the application process. So go ahead, move yourself into a place when you do create resumes, also create a cover letter. So let's cover a couple of quick points about what should you include in your cover letter when you're preparing it. A few points. For one, remember your cover letter has a specific purpose, and that's really about how to express yourself in more detail than your resume. It's really giving you the opportunity to show how you're going to be a good cultural fit for the company, as well as remember it's to complement, but it's not to replace a resume. And we actually have received in the past just cover letters without resumes, which we really can't move forward with just the cover letter. So use it as a way to complement your resume and not to replace it. We actually have a sample of our cover letter that you can review. I'm just going to pull out the highlights of it. So we have had a cover letter for the BLX program submitted. The candidate wrote that she's a grad student of a Master's of Social Work program, University of Maryland, Baltimore, with a community action and social policy specialization. She heard about BLX from a financial planner she was working with through the MD Cash campaign in order to enhance her own financial literacy. Now here's her why. Over the last couple of years, I've realized the importance of financial well-being and addressing individual and societal issues. Began a personal academic journey, being able to learn more about the topic. So, last quick point, the internship aligns with her personal interests, focusing on financial social work, and also that she's planning on um, becoming a certified financial planner after graduation. So these are some very strong points that aren't going to necessarily be on the resume, but it helps to give more of a visual for the hiring manager to see here's why this candidate is applying to this opportunity, and now it's going to be coupled with the resume and how well that's constructed and put together to determine if this is going to be someone who is going to be on the short list to interview. Feel free to ask any questions as we go along. This is what we're covering just for the cover letter. So if anyone has any quick thoughts or questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, we're just going to move forward into the next segment. Okay, so let's now look at the resume itself. What are some of the things that you really want to make sure that you're thinking about? We have two resumes side by side. They have the exact same information on it. It's the content that is the same, but the formatting is different. On the left side of the screen, you see that there is a Word document put together with the contact information at the top, work experience, education, and skills on the bottom, still organized, centered in the space of the page, but it looks less easy on the eyes. It's harder to read it. On contrast, on the right side, you have one that's basically designed using probably a graphic design template. It has color, it's got clearly defined columns from top to bottom. It's much easier and faster to read it. So you really want to look at how is the best presentation going to be received if you put your resume in just a Word doc, or if it's drafted and then moved into a templated format to the right. So clearly think about, it's going to be more polished, it's going to be a faster read, it's going to be much better received if it is a templated design that you're going to be submitting. Next, I want you to think about how to build your resume using action-oriented verbs. So what do I mean by that? We want you to think about each work experience, either bulleted line or description that you're going to include, is going to start with or have some kind of action verb included in your description. So when I say actions, like, you created something, maybe you created a special project, you designed something, you developed a project, you developed some kind of research on X, Y, and Z. Maybe you established something. Use words that are going to be pretty streamlined, but yet will describe what it is that you're going to be detailing on your work experience section of your resume. Now, here's a couple of examples for you. Created step-by-step instructions for a team project to improve consistency with the group. Volunteered to develop a social media campaign for a youth group or organization. Developed how to use Google Suite apps, reference materials for training purposes. These are actually examples that were used when we were working with applicants for the BLX program over the years. We were trying to help use some specific examples from college students who didn't really have that much work experience, but how to use some transferable skills from projects that were run. So I want you to think about, maybe if you don't have a lot of work experience, then what are some of the things that you can capture that you're working with a team or you're working with a group, or maybe these are some areas that you created some social media content for that you can then add on your resume for some things that you have created or done as examples of areas that you have personal interest or experience in.
Suzanne, it looks like we have a question. It says, is the length of your resume always one page, or can one work with a long work history or career change or use more than one page?
Yes, so this is a great answer, a great question, which we are definitely going to touch on this, but to give you some clarity right now, the length of your resume really should not exceed 2 pages. If you are someone who is a career changer or you have extensive work history that you want to still include and highlight, I would suggest you condensing what your work experience is so that it does not exceed more than 2 pages. And if you are not really sure what to keep, what to toss, I would say the more recent work is clearly going to be timely. And if it's work that you did 15 or 20 years ago, that it's not as timely as it is for a current hiring manager to review. So keep in mind, how much you want to include is really going to be driven by what's going to fit in 2 pages. I hope that answers your question. Customize your resume for each job. Now, one of the things that I would call as a common mistake is sometimes when you're creating a resume, you want to just create one resume and then use that to submit for every position that you're actually applying for, which is really challenging for a hiring manager to understand. Why does this resume have certain information, whereas the position that you're applying for is something different? So you want to customize your resume to fit the job description that you are applying for, or if it's for the BLX internship, keep in mind what are some of the things that a financial planning firm would be interested in for any candidate that they're considering as entry level who's looking to get the foot in the door. So if there is a job description, I want you to read the job description and look for the keywords that are included. Ask yourself, what experience do you have that relates to the job requirements? Then update your resume to reflect the experience that you have that most relates to that job description. So you want to do case by case for each resume that you are submitting. Here's an example of a job description that we put together. Now, this was so that you can have a little context. This is really for more of an administrative entry level type of job position that we selected for job duties. So here's a couple of points asking for in the description: arranging meetings, maintaining calendars, arranging travel or expense reports, coordinating, helping with bringing on new personnel or staff, answer questions, and solving problems related to some kind of daily office operations or policies and procedures, coordinate office workspace planning, ordering office equipment or materials with the facilities or IT departments, interface all levels with staff. So, whether it's for staff or for having experience with communicating with customers, they're looking for someone to have that kind of experience and supporting coordination of any kind of meeting materials. Some qualifications. Most firms want to know that you have some kind of Microsoft Office experience, Office suites, mainly Word, Outlook, and Excel. Those are kind of the three core software requirements that firms will have. When you have experience, and I'm just giving you a tip, sometimes people put down, yes, I'm very proficient in Microsoft Office, in all of these different programs, when in fact, maybe there's more experience with Word because you had to create reports or you had to write, information, but maybe not so much in Excel or in Outlook. So be careful about what you're putting on paper because that's going to be the expectation that the hiring manager is going to have. If you have basic knowledge of Excel, then include that. Have basic knowledge of Excel, more or strong experience with Microsoft Word. Just be very clear that it's okay if you're not a completely proficient in whatever technology, but don't sort of over simplify it by saying that these are very strong skill sets that you have when you're still really developing, getting more experience. Also, if you have any kind of organization skills or projects, maintaining calendars, if you work with project management software, if you've helped organizing, staffing schedules or your schedules, or anyone who has any kind of travel arrangements needed, that's always helpful to include. If you are seeing that they're asking for, someone with an associate's degree or a certain kind of experience with certain kind of tech, I would still just not necessarily indicate that you have an degree. Clearly, if you are in school, it's going to be clear that you are studying, and when you're about to projected to graduate, so you don't have to necessarily put that you don't have a degree, but let it be very clear if you are studying, if you are pursuing a degree, or if you have a degree, but it's in a different field, then that's fine to put that on there as well.
Yeah, and Suzanne, we have another question. Recommendations for career changers that have been out of the job market for several years.
Okay, so I would say if you are trying to figure out what to put in and what not to include, the transferable skills is what's going to drive your resume content. So if you, let's say, were in a field in something that was not necessarily for, we'll use, financial planning as sort of the base here. If you're interested in putting a resume together for financial planning, but you've been out of the job market, let's say for, 5 years or longer, maybe you stopped because you had, decided to raise children, or there was a family situation where you just had to pull yourself out of the job market and now you're looking to transition back in. I would keep the more relevant, more recent positions that you had experience in as maybe where you will end up having that as being the top position that you're listing on your work experience. Maybe it was a position that ended in 2016. You can have from 2016 until 2024, let's say, as indicated, um, was supporting family members or taking care of personal family situation for a time period until you are ready to transition back into the workforce. Just maybe a little indicator of why there's a 5-year gap or something that includes having a time period of when you finished and when you're getting back. Simultaneously, I would suggest that you add a objective as the opening part of your resume, which then says, I'm an experienced professional who is looking to enter into a position in a financial planning firm. um, I've transitioned from having customer service skills and or accounting background or whatever it is that you had extensive experience in. Just include that this is the background that you have, but now you're looking to get back into a role in a financial planning firm, something to that effect, because that will be the first thing that the firm reads, that the hiring manager reads, and then they'll see your work experience and your skills after that. So I hope that that helps to give you a little bit of framework how to start with your resume. Now, as far as relevant information on your resume is concerned, we want to make sure that you focus on relevant and not so much on what is really what you have done skill set wise, but it doesn't apply to the position you're applying for. So you don't need to list skills that are not relevant to the job you're applying for. If you're interested in applying for a position in finance, you don't need to include that you did dog walking experience or something that was just really a job or a project or kind of a gig that you had for whatever time period. It's not relevant. Don't worry about it. Omit it. You don't need to list reasons for leaving your job as well. So if that is something that you are concerned about or you want to bring it up, let that be part of the interview discussion if that is even asked of you. Don't assume that it needs to be on the resume because it doesn't. Your resume should just be very much focused on here's the experience I have, here's things that I've accomplished, here's software I know, here's soft skills I have. It should just really flow with all of the things that are the positives about you being a strong candidate for consideration. So we did have a question about the resume length, as I touched on a little earlier. But for entry level positions, you want to focus on the quality of your accomplishments. You want to condense it, in a sense, streamline it. How many unique or impressive achievements that you have in your past, because you know what it is, it's in your head, but how do you put it on paper? So you want to really think about some of the achievements that you've accomplished as opposed to a long list of here's tasks that I had as my responsibilities. People are looking for how to have a very streamlined way of reading a resume because usually so many resumes are reviewed. So you really want to make sure you're prioritizing what's important. If you worked on projects, if you've had different types of acknowledgments, even if it was something that was not necessarily work, but maybe it was volunteer work or volunteer related. You can list accomplishments as part of your description for the experience that you've had. I would not suggest more than 2 pages. One page if you're still in school and you're still working on getting more work experience, or if you've only been in the job market for a few years, 1 page is still going to be plenty for you to cover all of the areas that we've been touching on. If you are using a bulleted format, so you're including work experience and you put the company name, the time period, and the position that was held, you should be consistent with how many bullets that you're going to list under each of the employers. So I would say if you have maybe a shorter work experience time frame, then just use 3 bullets for any work that you're including on your resume. So, current position or your last position, 3 bullets of explanation of what you've done. Go to the next employer, 3 bullets of what you've done. And maybe you've only had 2 jobs while you're in school. That's fine. If you have more work experience and you want to put more highlights, then maybe put 4 or 5 bullets per work experience. So it just shows a little bit more range on some of the things that you have done in the past. And just make sure that you stay within the 2 resume page length limits. Let's talk a couple of minutes now about some of the red flags. The reason why we list spelling errors as first is because it's the most common. I can't tell you how many times we received typos on some of the resumes, but not only typos, but sometimes they're just grammar errors. If you rely solely on spell check to catch any typos, well, spell checks, as you know, will catch typos, but it won't necessarily check for grammar. And if a word has more than one meaning, there's a very good chance that the word will not be spelled correctly if it has the wrong meaning that you're using it for. So we often see word usage is incorrect even if the word is spelled correctly. That's going to be a glaring error to a hiring manager. So don't just rely only on spell check. Read your draft top to bottom and make sure everything is clear and absolutely correct and accurate. If there are specific directions that a job posting is requiring, make sure you follow it. If you're printing out resumes, so let's say you submitted a resume, it's in the system for where you submitted it. When we receive resumes, we review it, we meet with the applicant, and then if we send your resume out to the hiring managers, they may do a Zoom interview, but the second interview, if it's for a local office that they're requiring the person work in, they're going to usually have you come in for the second or third interview. And you should always bring a printed resume with you. Make sure it's crisp, it's clean, there's no food or coffee stains or water or crumpled or creases. I'm mentioning this only because it's assumed that if you're bringing in a resume that that's how it's going to look, but you would be surprised that it sometimes is not taken with care. It should look just like it came out of the printer, that you're going to be handing it over to someone, put it inside of a folder or some kind of binder that you will carry that all the way in person. to be able to pull them out and hand them out. Make sure you have more than one resume with you because you might be meeting with more than one person. If you have employment gaps, some of the things that you can do is what I had suggested. If it's a large gap, then maybe just fill in the time period on your resume, why you were not employed during this time period. But if you're a college student, or maybe you worked and then you decided to go back to college, it's actually not uncommon to have a couple of years where it's clear that you went to school, but you want to make sure that you can address any employment gaps either in an introductory paragraph on your resume, like what I had just described, or in your cover letter that you are working, you were working, now you're in school full time and you're looking for an internship opportunity, something that gives clarification. You want to absolutely have good formatting. Poor formatting is very much a red flag. You also want to eliminate or omit any unnecessary information that doesn't have anything to do with the kind of position that you're applying for. So here's an example of what a resume that has different scripted fonts mixed in there. So, the name Emma Burton is not really a more conventional or traditional font. So we suggest you don't use something that's in italics or script for any part of the copy. Also, if you notice on the email address, it's really probably an email that was created for fun, something that was created for, friends or peers, that is not necessarily more on a professional manner. We've seen several email that is very, very much not really a professional address to use for a resume submission. So we always suggest, if your email needs to be more, just I'll call it professional, polished, toned down, just set up a Gmail account so that you'll be able to make sure that you have accurate information and it comes across very clean and professional to the employer. Someone put it in the chat, can you hear me okay in the group? Okay, perfect. Thank you for letting me know. Perfect, thank you. So, I wanted to see if there's any additional questions right now that any of you have that you can think of. This is sort of a little bit of time where you can just ask, are there things that sometimes you're not certain about what to include, or are there any thoughts that you have for what you should add? One other tip that I can share with everyone is if you have at the bottom of your resume a necessary information slide, yes, we can put that back up again. If you have any questions or tips, no, you just passed it. There we go. Uh, okay. Are there action verbs that I can think of that would highlight? Sorry. Are there action verbs I can think of that would highlight financial experience? Um, well, the action verbs, as I was saying, is really more about what it was that you want to highlight or what you want to explain that you've accomplished. So depending on the kind of financial experience, because I don't, and unless you want to clarify what kind of financial experience, is it more about, how well you work with numbers, or something that's more tied to, um, sort of Excel, calculations? Is it something that relates more to software type of experience, or working with customers? It might be a little too broad for me to be able to pinpoint it. Just thought there might be some terms or phrases that we've seen that stood out. Usually the terms or phrases are more about, if you have financial experience, what kind of experience is that? So are you experienced working with clients before? Have you helped people who are needing to reduce their debt, or looking to save, or looking to prepare for retirement? Those are typically more of the scenarios that I would say is more relevant than, specific phrases that's more industry lingo. If you have interest in studying for the CFP coursework, or have taken any kind of externships that are for software, or something that's tied to using apps, or different kinds of programs for um, making calculations for projections on, how long it will take to reduce debt. So those are the types of references that we've seen that would be very appealing to hiring managers, as opposed to terminology or lingo, if you will. Does the BLX program, uh, okay, let me scroll up a little bit. Does the BLX program help students who are solely trying to acquire full-time positions? That BLX program actually is for both it's more of, the ask is really more for getting some kind of experience in financial planning. So whether you're just looking for summer experience, for full-time or part-time over summer, or if you're looking to acquire experience in the summer, and then at the end of the internship be able to be eligible for a full-time position, those are really what we try to help to match up with the firms. So you would basically let us know on the application that you're looking for a summer internship with, full-time hours or part-time hours, and you're looking to find a position or be eligible for a hire at the end of the internship, because those are sort of some of the key pieces that we try to match up with firms who are looking to hire over the summer, to have an intern over, let's say 8 to 12 weeks. And if everything goes well, they'd be eligible for hire at the end. Sometimes they're eligible for part-time positions, sometimes they're eligible for full-time positions. So your application is really going to help our team to match up who are the employers who are looking to hire over next summer, and what is it that you're hoping will be your outcome at the end of your internship. Is it appropriate to list volunteer work? What if associated with a church? Would that potentially turn screeners and managers off? Actually, that was one of the tips I was about to provide before the questions started coming in. You are absolutely encouraged to include at the, usually at the bottom of your resume, after whatever work experience, what kind of volunteer experience that you have. It's absolutely fine. It is with a church. What were some of the things that you want to share? Was it doing community service? Was it maybe helping with specific programs. Were you working with children? Were you working with adults? Were you how are you helping with the church? What were some of the things that were, again, skills that you want the hiring manager to know that you have? I've actually had conversations with a couple of people who actually had financial literacy programs that the church was doing, and they just volunteered and they were able to sit down and kind of hear what were some of the church member challenges that they were looking for help, saving money for the future, or paying off debt, or getting a budget together. So that would be something that you should really define. What was the volunteer work that you've done? Who was it with? And it's totally fine. It would not necessarily turn off any screeners or managers. It does show that that's something that you're passionate about, and it will resonate with some hiring managers more than others, but it's completely fine for you to include that. Okay, next question. Do you know if being a loan originator in the mortgage industry counts as work experience for the CFP designation? It would seem this would be the case, considering if you're going through all steps of the financial planning experience. Um, I would say that I don't know if it counts as work experience for the CFP designation, and Chloe, feel free to chime in at any point. Chloe is a CFP herself, but it certainly is still going to benefit having knowledge of the calculations, the requirements for what would be considered, you know where the debt to equity ratios, things that are still tied to understanding the financial aspects of it. But CFP has very specific tracks that are part of the components of the CFP designation and coursework.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think it would fully count. Just yeah, because it is a little bit different. There's things that are not, there's experience that's not relative or related to the mortgage industry, such as, like there's insurance, estate planning, tax planning, yeah, just a lot of areas that don't necessarily overlap. So yeah.
And we do see people applying almost regularly from the mortgage industry into trying to transition into financial planning. What I would say is think about what your transferable skills are and put more emphasis on what is going to probably resonate a little bit better. If it's doing very specific loan processing, that's less attractive because that's a totally different side of the business. It's really going to be more about your knowledge with, numbers and calculations, and what are some of the things that maybe you can put as skills that would be applicable to the financial planning side of the business. Okay. Are there any other questions that anyone may
Yeah,
have?
there was one more question that came in the Q&A. And it says, sorry if you've already addressed this. Do you have thoughts on adding a company/organization summaries? One of my resume writers suggested this, but she's not in the financial services industry. So I'm not sure if you can clarify company organization summary, maybe in the chat.
Is this earlier?
Yeah, I mean, it's about 10 minutes ago, but yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by the company or organization summary, if you want to.
Suzanne, it's in the Q&A. I think that question came in not through the chat, but through the Q&A, if you can
Correct.
see that on the
Oh,
bottom of your screen.
oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it. Thank you, Kim. Thoughts or thoughts on adding company organization summaries? Oh, okay. So basically oh, I see your response. Okay. So you're saying put information about the company or the organization itself as opposed to your own, here's what I did at that company or your own responsibilities. So typically when we see resumes, it's really more important to focus on your skill set because the hiring manager, to be 100% honest, the hiring manager is in their own world. They're thinking of what is it that this person can do for our team? What is it that they can understand and follow with our culture and our processes and our procedures? So I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you put descriptions of the organizations that you worked at previously. That would really be an opportunity for the firm to, or the hiring manager to interview and ask you questions about it if they felt that that was something of interest to them. But 9 times out of 10, they're really just more focused on here's what we do, this is what's important to us, how do you fit in with the company that you're going to be interviewing with. So you want your resume to really speak to the hiring manager and not so much for the work experience that you've had at other companies or organizations as part of taking up time and space on your resume. You only have a page, maximum two. Just load it up with here's my skills, here's what I did at this company, here's some of the accomplishments that I've had. That's what's going to be much more important for a hiring manager to read. So hopefully that addresses that question. And are there any last thoughts or questions that anyone has? Oh, okay. I see a question about um, oh, I think this is part two for your question about the mortgage industry. It's usually the largest asset with all the documentation you have to go over, building a book of business education. Okay. So that was really just more context. So thank you, Michael, for your additional chat comments. Should we omit irrelevant degrees was also asked. Well, if you do have a degree, my question to you would be, is it required for you to have a bachelor when you're submitting an application? And if it is, then you still need to indicate that you have accomplished it. If it does not require a degree, then you can keep it off if it's completely irrelevant. But it's kind of a little bit of a tricky situation because a lot of the financial planning firms, unless you're applying for an internship, will want some kind of degree. I would suggest that if you're applying for the BLX, go ahead and include it as part of your resume, and you can indicate on your application that you are a career changer, you are interested in pursuing financial planning through the internship, and and here's why. And that's just going to be on your application, and that will be reviewed as part of your application process. And then, you can speak with one of the team members, should there be an opportunity for you to schedule an interview with one of the team members. So hopefully that will be helpful for you as far as guidelines are concerned. Okay, and you're welcome. All right, any last questions? I know we're just about out of time, but this is fantastic that everyone is coming up with some very specific things that will hopefully be helpful pointers for you.
Yeah, I see one more. It says, can I resubmit or amend my resume to BLX? So I'm assuming maybe someone that's already applied.
Oh, okay, so it already was submitted.
Yeah, I assume so.
I think that that's fine. I think it's fine. We can certainly make sure, since it's been submitted, that if there's an updated version, you're basically going to be contacted by one of the team members anyway, so you can let them know that there has been an additional updated resume. And we'll just be sure to pull it. It's probably going to go automatically into your folder anyway. But yes, it's fine for you to resubmit it.
Yeah, I would say you don't necessarily have to redo the whole application. Yeah, just respond back to the team member at ABS. Yeah, with a copy and an email. That should be fine.
That's yeah, that actually is totally fine, because we're going to be reaching out to you. So as Chloe mentioned, you may as well just wait until you get the email, and then you can resubmit it at that point, because you'll actually have an email from one of the interviewers who's going to let you know that it's time to schedule an interview.
All right. Well, I think that takes care of all the questions. Thanks everyone for attending. And like I said, please sign up for the rest of the webinars, and we will see you again next week.
Thanks, everyone.